Hello, everyone. It's day one of the Royal Ascot meeting. It's myself, Rory and John Arnold for RacingDaily.com. We're going to give a brief morning update on all things Ascot, give our selections, run through the card, and hopefully, in the process, bag a hat full of winners. So there's no point waiting around. First race, John, we've got the 2:30. It's the Queen Anne. We've got the first three home in the lock-ins that are going to meet again. Rosalien, the current short-priced favourite. That horse is obviously expected to improve upon the third place finish that it had last time out. It's expected to go much closer. Personally, I'm not as convinced as some others that he's guaranteed to reverse that form. I don't think it'll be a shock if he did. Uh, One of those races where you could perhaps make a case for half the field. If something won at, say, 10s or 12 to 1, I don't think it would be an absolute massive shock. Something at bigger odds to perhaps overturn those three horses that appeared in the lock-ins. From a punting perspective, I think Rosalien, for me, is perhaps too short. There's three places on offer. I'm probably going to play it safe. Perhaps I'm chickened out a little bit with this selection, but I think Dancing Gemini to finish in the top three, finish in the mix again, I don't think that's drastic. Would have preferred softer ground, but it was good to firm last time, and it finished second. One of those horses that's sort of been a bit of a model of consistency throughout this season. Perhaps have a few more miles on the clock than you'd have wanted, but currently 13 to 2. I think that's just a decent each way price. Nothing that I want to go too strong on, especially kicking off the meeting, but 13 to 2. Yeah, I'll take that for Dancing Gemini to hopefully finish in the first three again. If Rosalien goes and wins, fine, but I'll take a small bit of each way profit if it comes my way. Where are you going with there in the 2:30, mate?
Yeah, you made some good points there about where the value is in the race. If you look at the bigger prices, a horse that will likely get up in the top 3 to 5 places, I think, will be Docklands. Docklands always runs very well at Ascot and likes to track, and I think Docklands would be a good each way bet. But for me personally, I'm going to go a Notable Speech because I think it will like the straight course. It likes running at the track. It's not a horse that, even though it can go around the bend pretty well, I think it will improve from the race in the lock engine. So I think Notable Speech is quite a solid bet in the first race. I think the Godolphin team have played it down a little bit about how much the horse has probably improved. So I'm going to stick with Notable Speech in the first race.
Those are our thoughts on the first. We're going to jump quickly to the Coventry in the 3:05. Personally, for me, I'm not the biggest fan of the 2-year-old races. I think it tends to be a watching brief from a betting perspective. Obviously, you've got the simple factor that you've not got as much form to go off. Any horse lining up in this, though, they're all going to be beautifully bred. So I don't think breeding as much, it perhaps isn't as big a factor in the sense that it might be if you're looking at the average midweek maiden or the average midweek 2-year-old race. If you're going to Ascot, you've got a beautifully bred horse that will have cost any owner a pretty penny. Look, it's 21 runners. They're all 2-year-olds. I'm going to throw 2 darts. Again, nothing that I want to be overly confident with. You've got Wathnan Racing. They've been throwing out a fair few pennies around prior to this meeting. I reckon Postmodern has a strong chance here. Showed signs of greenness at Yarmouth. Still ended up absolutely obliterating that field by, I think, about 5 lengths. Obviously, what it beat that day, it's up for question. Only time will tell. But it's one of those that it was hard not to be impressed. And then the other one is Kevin Ryan's Rock on Thunder. I think unlike Postmodern, it wasn't a demolition job in its maiden. It was very sort of workmanlike, shall we say. But I reckon it'll come on leaps and bounds for that. If there's a bookie offering 5 or maybe 6 places, I'd be happy to back both of them each way. Again, not overly strong in terms of, fancies for the meeting, especially with a big field like this. But Postmodern, Rock on Thunder, each way plays. I think those would be my 2 darts there. Yourself, John?
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head quite well there. It's a beautiful race to watch. It's 2-year-olds of the best breed, and it is beautiful in the sunshine to see them horses come along there to the meeting. There's been movement in the market for two horses, which is quite interesting, is Warsaw and American Golf. American Golf is being ridden by Oisin Murphy for Paul Cole's son, and they've got quite a good record in the race. That had one run as well, and it won in very similar fashion to how Postmodern won at Yarmouth. And Warsaw is this set, well, looks on paper like it's the second string of Ballydoyle because Wayne Lordan's going to ride it instead of Ryan Moore, who's going to be on the favourite. But on breeding, Warsaw is very good. And I saw Warsaw's performance in Ireland, and it's bred by Wootton Bassett as well. So you're right, you could throw many darts at this. Military Code, very good horse. Toughed out the victory, like you said, a very tough victory. 2 races that it's won in very good style. So for me, the 2 I've gone for in this race is Military Code and Warsaw, and I think that you're right. As you could take any 10 runners out at 21 could do this race. You said about Waltham Racing. Yes, they have spent a lot of money. Last night they spent £2 million on Ghostwriter, so they're not afraid to go out and try and buy some success at the meeting, which may come in this race or may come later in the week. But for this race, I'll go for Military Code and Warsaw.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it? I mean, it's worth having a bet because I think you can get a bit of value with the 2-year-old races if there's something that you do have a fancy with. But very much a watching brief, going to end up with potentially X amount of superstars, but they're just not at that point yet, whether or not we know. But time will tell. 340. It's the Group 1 King Charles III Stakes. Obviously, already mentioned Waltham Racing, and now they've been making purchases left, right, and centre. They've made another one here with Knight Raider. That's the one for me. Was off for, I think, near enough 6 months before putting in a decent effort. I think it was third last time out. I think it'll appreciate a drop back to 5. I think that's definitely a positive. I don't think this year's renewal is perhaps as star-studded, shall we say, as it has been in the past. Again, Knight Raider, another each-way shout for me. I think it's one of those where you could potentially see, how would I word it, some top-level handicappers picking up some money or picking up some prize money in this because there's not a superstar as such. Whether or not there is down the line, we'll see. But Knight Raider, my each-way shout. Hopefully, Waltham Racing can kickstart the meeting pretty well there in the King Charles III. Yourself, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's you're right. It could come from a good handicapper. Everyone's spoken about Asforo. We spoke about it earlier in the week. Murphy was saying how much he believed that he was happy against the field. But a horse I stuck with, and I mentioned it on our preview, is Balmoral Lady. I'm still sticking each way with Balmoral Lady because I saw it win well at Haydock in a good handicap, like you say. It's good on the ratings, and it's got a good pilot. Tom Marquand's going to ride it for Ed Walker, and I think at 33-1, with the amount of places that is on offer, I'm really going to be strong and stick with Balmoral Lady each way.
Yeah, I think that's from a punting angle. I think that's something that we'd probably echo in terms of anyone putting a bet on. There's going to be bookmakers that are paying extra places, giving potentially a quarter of the odds, giving whatever additional boosts when it comes to meetings like this, just as it is at the Cheltenham Festival in terms of the jump season. There's always going to be bookmakers knowing that there's perhaps punters that aren't regular bettors on racing. To attract them, they're going to throw out offers and all sorts. Shop around, see what's there, see what's available. You're going to get perhaps a bit more better value or extra place terms or whatever it might be with meetings like this. So it's definitely worth having a nose in, seeing what bookies are giving what away. 420, St James's Palace. Like I said, it's a race where it's not so much underwhelming because obviously you've got 3 Guineas winners in it, but it's a really tricky one to decipher from a punting perspective. I think simply because with only 7 runners, there's just the 2 places available. Without being unkind, it looks to be a 3-horse race. The 3 Guineas winners, like I said, that stand out in terms of Field of Gold, Henri Matisse, and Ruling Court. I'd be relatively confident that the first 3 home are going to be those 3. Field of Gold looks the best of the 3, but he's a clear odds-on shot. so there's no value, I don't think. It's boring, but I'm going to go Field of Gold. But I just don't think he's as sure a thing as his odds might have you believe. And I'd probably say of the other two, Ballydoyle's Henri Matisse is perhaps the most likely to push him close. Look, if you can get a TriCast on, I think a combination TriCast, those three also finishing the placings. I don't think there's anything outside of those three that has anything to worry them. Field of Gold, slightly the one to be on, but again, I'm not going to be right at getting the checkbook out to slap a big bet on a horse at 4-5 in a race like that, where I think you look at the 2,000 guineas in it, and a lot of people think that Field of Gold should have won that. Perhaps that's a bit unkind to the eventual winner. Ruling Court could come out and go, actually, no, I deserve to win, and I'll show why this afternoon. Field of Gold is the one for me, but it's pretty much a watching brief, to be fair. What about yourself, John?
Yeah, I think you've got a really good point there. Is that everyone expects Field of Gold to win after redeeming itself at the Curragh, and it won very well at the Curragh. He gave it the perfect ride, and I think he'll do the same thing again today. I think he won't hang off too much to give it the horse too much to do, and we'll see an out and out sprint for the last couple of furlongs to see, who comes out as the best miler. But Henri Matisse, Ballydoyle had this way of producing horses at the right time, and I think as much as I'm a fan of all three of them, I think they're all brilliant horses. You're right that from a betting angle, there doesn't seem to be a lot there. So I think you're right that the play in the race would probably be a trifecta of the three and trying to get it in the right order. I think Field of Gold will win. I see him winning the race, but you never can rule out Ballydoyle, and I could still see more, getting something more out of the horse that we haven't seen yet, and it did win very well in France, and it's got a very open live chance. If anybody was having just one bet in the race, I'd probably say go on Matisse, because he's going to give it all. They want the race for the breeding. So yeah, I think I've gone for Field of Gold and Henri Matisse. But if I was to say to someone, what one would you put your mind to for one bet in the race, I'd go for Henri Matisse.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Henri Matisse is probably the horse that I would fear most. If Field of Gold isn't going to win, I think Henri Matisse is perhaps slightly more clear of the Godolphin horse. But I think it's around 7-2 Henri Matisse. If it gets to about 4-1, I think I doubt it's going to drift. Look at connections, look at the jockey. I don't think it will do. But if someone gave me 4-1, I'd be tempted to have a decent play at that. But it's one of those races. It's there's no each way value. There's no value in backing the favourite really. We shall see what happens at just gone 4:30. But yeah, that's that one. We'll move on to the 5 o'clock. It's the Ascot Stakes, first handicap of the meeting. We've got obviously two horses that are perhaps better known for some of their jumps exploits in Pony Ross and East India Dog. We've got the King's Horse with Ryan Moore and Willie Mullins in Reaching High. That's the current favourite, I think. If I'm being totally honest, again, I don't have any major strong fancy in this, so I'm going to go for one at, I think, is a huge price. Joseph O'Brien, I think, has a fair few in this. I think he's got about 4 or 5 horses. I reckon, believe it or not, San Salvador could help his odds. Currently around, I think he's around 100-1. He's only had 3 flat starts. He's won one of them, placed in one of them. Can be forgiven his last effort. I think that was over 1 mile 4. I reckon he'll absolutely love this extended trip. I think it's 2.5 miles. Just a small bit of interest for me in this one. Again, a lot of runners. Hopefully there's a bookie giving 5 or 6 places. And hopefully San Salvador, at the age of 9, bless him, could potentially do far better than 100-1 suggests. But again, very, very small stakes, just for a bit of interest there in the 5 o'clock. What about yourself, John?
Yeah, the 2 horses I've picked are 2 of the horses that I've picked out already for the Northumberland Plate. So I picked out for Northumberland Plate, I picked out East India Dock and Manxman, and they're both running here today in the 5 o'clock. I know that James Doyle has come and taken the ride for East India Dock. The ground may be an issue for it. It might be a little bit too quick, but it can stay, and it stayed over hurdles, as it showed when it ran at Cheltenham, and it got quite close to winning that. Manxman is a good runner. The Crisfords have got a very good form line with Manxman, and again, them horses will be fit and ready for this race because they'll be fit and ready for the race coming up at Newcastle as well. So for me, the 2 plays in this each way are East India Dock and Manxman. I think they'll be up there in the places.
Brilliant. That was the first handicap of the day, obviously the Ascot Stakes. Next race, the 5:35, we've got the Wolverton. Again, like a lot of these races, it looks ridiculously open, probably as you'd expect in a Wolverton. Now, I promise I'm not following Wathnan blind, but I think Hartem makes plenty of appeal. Won the Jersey Stakes at this meeting last year. Can be forgiven his poor run last time out on ground that just didn't suit whatsoever in France. You'd imagine he's been aimed at this meeting and ticks plenty of boxes. And I think at a bigger price, Liberty Lane could go well. Won last time out, a second behind Lead Artist. Could look like solid form by the time this race is off. Obviously, Lead Artist running earlier in the day. I'm a Carl Burke fan. I think Liberty Lane could go well at a price, but I think of the two, if I had to go for one, I think Hartem as an each way viable option there in the Wolverton. Yourself, John?
Yeah, Liberty Lane and Ecriel Secret. Liberty Lane toughed out a really good victory at Goodwood against a horse called Maidan, who is in the race again today as well, and again for the Crisfords. And Liberty Lane, again, Carl Burke has a very good record at Ascot. So I think Liberty Lane each way is a good steer in this. And Ecriel Secret won at Epsom, and it won in very good style, coming around a very difficult track, and it won quite cosily. And Richard Fahey's put the horse in quite quick again. So I think Ecriel Secret and Liberty Lane are 2 good priced horses available in this. So they're the 2 for me: Liberty Lane each way and Ecriel Secret.
Brilliant. And last but by no means least, we've got the Copper Horse handicap. It's the second handicap. It's another sort of not marathon trip, but 1 mile 6. Again, it sounds like a broken record. It's another race where I'm not super strong on anything, but I reckon Fairbanks might be worth a few pennies each way. Finished 6th in the Duke of Edinburgh last year at this meeting. Has done well on both the flat and over obstacles of late. Slight concern about his handicap mark. I think it might be a little bit too high, but could go well at a price. Again, nothing that is jumping off the page to me drastically, so I'd rather not pick something for the sake of picking something and telling people to back it. It's some sort of max bet type job. None of that nonsense. I think Fairbanks, just for a little bit of interest, each way play there in the last. Yourself, John?
Yeah, you're right. It's difficult for this one, but Caballo de Mar is very high in the betting for the plate, and it's another horse that we know will stay the distance. So I think that will run a good race each way. And Charles is Ryan Moore's horse for Willie Mullins. And Moore and Mullins normally at Ascot will get one of the longer races. It's normally the Queen Alexander that they tend to do very well in. But again, this one has all the hallmarks of a possibility for them. So the 2 for me are Caballo de Mar and Charles, both each way in the last race today.
Brilliant. That's day 1 boxed off from myself and John. We will be back every morning of the festival, all the way up until Saturday morning. So stay tuned, check our socials. Obviously, as always, any likes, comments and shares, very much welcome. Hopefully you absolutely smashed it on day 1 of Royal Ascot. I've been Rory Paddock, joined by the absolutely fabulous John Arnold. As always, likes, comments and shares, very much appreciated, and enjoy day 1 of Royal Ascot.